Essentially, I am helping people with their finances. My background was as a stockbroker, as a chartered financial planner or advisor, but I felt there was a huge gap, where people could only get help if they had money, or they would only be taken seriously if they had a certain amount of money to invest. The stock market always goes up over time.
Yeah.
Always. That is a fact. But it's a bit like looking at the Himalayas from space. Like, you know, you can't just go down and walk across it. So there's going to be some big ups and downs. Like, and it's kind of the same with the stock market. You've got to realise there's going to be some times that you don't feel particularly well investing, because there's going to be some nervous times. There's going to be some great times where you make lots of money, but you've got to realise that it is going to be like a volatile. I had this conversation with a client recently. Their dad had made lots of money in the stock market, had never mentioned the stock market to them ever. That's kind of like the way it works almost, and that's why it's so important to talk about like money and to help your kids. Because why would you not want to give the gift of financial education, knowing fine well they're going to have to deal with money every single day of their life?
Hello and welcome back to the Built Different podcast with your host, Stephen Pettigrew. My guest this week is Martin McLeod. Martin is a financial expert and helps people like yourself to get on top of their finances, invest in the stock market with a bit of confidence, and he goes through a number of strategies on this episode where you can level up your investments and take control of your finances. So without further ado, let's get into the episode with Martin. Martin, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on, my friend. How are you?
Good. Thank you for inviting me on. It's lovely to be here.
I've been chasing you for a wee while, so it's I'm glad
I'm finally here.
It's Valentine's Day, so you finally accepted
exactly.
my invite.
And the kids are off school. It's a great excuse to get out of the house.
Exactly. So, the reason I wanted you on, mate, I've been really interested in your story because you first came on my radar maybe 6 months ago or something, and I noticed you've got this massive LinkedIn following. Like, it's just crazy. And I then watched a couple of the other podcasts you've done, and you only really started on LinkedIn, I think it was
2022, yeah, just at the tail end of 2022. Maybe my first post was November, I think, 2022. I had about 38 followers then or something. So
aye. And it's at least 15,000 now, isn't it?
I think it's about 18,000 now, yeah.
18,905.
Yeah, something around about 18,000 now. But it's just consistency, though. A lot of people think that LinkedIn doesn't work because they naturally post for a month or post for 3 months. Like, when I started posting on LinkedIn, you were getting very few comments. Yeah. When you start posting on LinkedIn, I was getting absolutely no clients at all, because people need to know you, then they need to like you, then they need to trust you. It's that process that they go through, and it's also building up, that bank of content that you can kind of go to, that you know what works and what doesn't work, and what's engaging and what brings maybe clients or potential clients towards you. So it's all like a learning curve. But like social media is like, I had absolutely no experience with social media, so that's my first time posting on anything. But I think just naturally being like more of a creative person than a numbers person anyway, it helps because I can like play guitar and make up a daft song, or I can like create a daft video.
Pictures with Laura Woods and stuff.
Pictures of the Scotland trips, because that's me probably touring the world, watching Scotland, having a few drinks and putting that on LinkedIn, and people identify with that because they might be similar, or they might love football, or they might just think, well, you don't take yourself too seriously, so maybe I'd be worth approaching. Maybe he's not this boring finance guy that like is going to like bore me to death about the stock market. Maybe I'll learn something, and like he's approachable in that sense. Yeah,
because I think the financial industry, and we'll touch on it, your background in a wee second, but it does have this perception of being very stuffy, corporate, lack of personality maybe. And that's the thing that drew me to, again, your posts are brilliant, I've got to say. Your hooks at the start generally work. When I get a bit of envy, because every time I look at your posts, you've got like 50 comments. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, what's going on here? So you've definitely cracked the formula. But for the people that maybe don't know about you, tell us a wee bit about your backstory and what you do.
Cool. Yep. So I am the founder of Financial Health Club, which is kind of, they use the word financial coach. I'm not a great fan of the word coach because it just like makes you think of those like high school American movies. But essentially, I am helping people with their finances. My background was as a stockbroker, as a chartered financial planner or advisor, but I felt there was a huge gap, where people could only get help if they had money, or they would only be taken seriously if they had a certain amount of money to invest, or there was no help for people just beginning to invest. There was no help for people who maybe just wanted to know where they were in life without having to actually invest money.
Yep.
And I think it was like when I was working for Schroders, like I had a conversation with somebody that was in the computer gaming industry that had quite a lot of money. And we spoke to him for hours and hours. And I spoke to him and he was just asking me lots and lots of questions. And at the end of it, I said, so you're looking to invest money? Because he had quite a considerable amount of money. He just said, actually, Martin, no, I just wanted to see that it was okay. I wanted you to give me a wee plan for my future. And I just wanted to know that, like, some of the questions that I'd been pondering over, like for years, that I was going to be okay, that in this investment strategy was suitable. And I was thinking, there is that gap there that people they don't want to be sold to, but they kind of need to know, where am I in life? How can I make it better? Like, what's that going to provide in my future? But also people starting out who couldn't get a financial advisor or wealth manager because they don't have enough money. They need help. You know, people you meet in the school run that say, like, I'd like to start investing, but they wouldn't be taken seriously by anybody in the industry because they just don't have enough yet.
Yeah.
So there was this like idea where, like, when I worked in finance, I never saw a difference between somebody with 2 million and somebody with 20,000, but the industry does, because they target high wealth and they see them as different, whereas I see everybody's equal. So it's to me, I'm in the perfect job now of helping anybody regardless of wealth. But what's happened is now lots of people with wealth come to me because they might be about to invest £1 million, but they now want somebody to sit down in a room with them and actually give them honest answers. Like, so it's like, can I ask you like loads of questions before I actually invest this money with this wealth manager? Because now they're in a position where they think, if I just get some coaching, I'll understand what the stock market is, what the risks are, what my risk level is, what an investment is, how funds are constructed, what I should be charged before I go and get like pumped for fees that I shouldn't be paying. Like, and I think that's something I didn't expect when I started the business. I didn't think I'd be dealing with the high net worth individuals, but a lot of them are coming and saying, look, I like your LinkedIn content. You seem like you could actually just give me some of the questions that I've been pondering for years. And that I think has been a side of it I didn't expect. I thought I'd be helping a lot more of the beginner side, which obviously I love doing, but I wasn't expecting to be doing kind of a mix of both.
How did you get into the stock market in the first place?
It's a very good question. I was at a wedding with stockbrokers, and at that time I was working in a sales job, and they said to me, why don't you come to London and be a stockbroker? And I was like, that to me was like, you know, something you saw in films. I was like, there's no chance I can be a stockbroker. And they're like, no, you could pass these exams. We're pretty confident you could pass the exams, and that it's just like any job, you'll learn when you're on the job. I still didn't really believe it, but at the end of the day, I was single. I had like nothing to lose. Like, all my friends were settling down, and like I was like literally the last one standing.
To rebel against that.
Exactly. So I was thinking, right, it's worth a chance. So I went down to London. I passed the exams quite quickly, and then worked in the stock market, and then soon learned that like a lot of these people that were doing this job don't really know much about the stock market, and a lot of the stuff that I had to learn came from reading books and understanding that the people that had done it before were much more important than people that are trying to sell. Because I think it's like anything, if people, the financial industry is built on sales, so sometimes they want the best salespeople rather than the best finance people, the people that care the most. So I learned that very quickly, and it was a great insight to learning about the stock market, because it's something I would never have come across otherwise. Like, a boy from Falkirk's not going to like come across the stock market in his 20s. Like, I didn't even know what it was, except that it was that flashing thing that went up in the news, FTSE 100. I didn't even know what it was. It was just a case of like being lucky enough to go and experience that and work in the city at a time when the city was thriving before the great crash of 2008, where you know, so it was long days, but it was worth it to get that kind of understanding of what the stock market was.
Yeah, because like, as we all know, you don't get exposed to any of this stuff at school. It's like, I only really learned, and I've got a tiny bit of knowledge compared to yourself, Martin, but I only started learning about this maybe last year. And I was just saying, like, all the tickers that come up, FTSE, you know, NASDAQ and all, I was like, what? It's a different language. I don't even know what this is. Yeah. And then you start to expose yourself to a little bit of education. And whilst I'm no expert, I get it, and I understand bits of it, the basics. But they don't do this stuff in school. Is that something that needs to change? Will it ever change? You know, what do you think about that?
I would love it to be taught in school, but I've got my doubts about why it's not, because it just seems to have been so long that we've got so many classes in different subjects, and money is not one of them. Because it's like they talk about money mindset being learned by around about the age of 7. We start to form a money mindset. We start to copy other people, whether that's parents, it could be like television programs, it could be watching a soap and watching people spend money on credit cards and thinking that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think like basic financial education, like, it amazes me that we sit like, and I remember like every day in maths class chewing gum, staring out the window, like what are we learning this
Just
Pythagoras
passing
theorem
time.
for? Yeah,
Right.
what would this trigonometry? We've got one of these scientific calculators. They've actually made me buy this. You know, like
Yeah.
I've had to go and buy this, and I've got no
On a
idea what's
credit card.
happening with it. You know, exactly, but and they don't teach me like how do you work out a mortgage? Like how do you work out what's a credit card actually doing? Like how do I work out what my savings rate should be once I start making income? How does the stock market work? Can somebody explain like investment compounding to me? Like, you know, Albert Einstein called like that the 8th wonder of the world.
Yeah.
But yet we pretty much talked about every single other thing that Einstein made up in his life that referred to things like in the universe that we'll never come across. But we didn't learn about that thing that he said about the 8th wonder of the world. Why not? You know, like my question is like, why are we not learning about stuff? 100% of those people that leave school will need to deal with money. How many of them need to become mathematicians that will use Pythagoras theorem again? Or like I never ever understood that. So I guess, will it change? Should it change? Yes. But
it's almost intentional, isn't it? It's like, you know, the school system's designed to create little busy workers, bee workers, you know, and the more education you've got, the more chance you've, you know, maybe not the right phrase, but to escape the matrix, you know, and start earning money for yourself without necessarily having to do the grunt work and work to your 75 and rely on a state pension. So no, I agree it should change, but you're right, I don't think it ever will. Maybe not ever, but it's a long shot.
Guys, Stephen here with a quick interruption to this podcast, and it's for good reason, as I wanted to share with you my partner for the podcast, Suited and Booted. Suited and Booted are a premium formal and casual wear brand with stores across Glasgow, Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I partnered up with Suited and Booted because they have a fantastic service, a great team and great products. And if you want to know more about these guys, head to suitedbooted.com or visit one of their stores in Glasgow, Dubai or Abu Dhabi.
So, okay, when you were in the stock market and you were seeing everything around about you, obviously when I think of the stock market prior to getting some education, my mind always wanders to like Wolf of Wall Street. Was it anything like that? Was it as mad or as vicious and cynical as that movie portrayed?
Elements of it, yes. In London at that time, yes. You know, there was people selling client lists in pubs. There was all the madness of Wolf of Wall Street happening all over the shop. Sometimes at lunchtimes, and it was a crazy world back then. There was no holds barred in that respect. It was like people would drink at lunchtime. There would be other stuff going on at lunchtime. It was a crazy, crazy world. It was a crazy, crazy world. It's like back then, it seemed to be there was a license to print money. Everybody was borrowing and leveraging, and there was the stock market was going to go up forever. There was there was that image of people kind of work hard and play hard, and you know there was a lot of like suicides in the city at that time and things like that. You know, like it was quite a. When you look back in it, it was obviously a time of excess, I would describe it as. I think lots of controls would have come in after that to stop businesses spending client money and various things that were probably happening back then. I think there'll have been a lot of good changes after what happened in 2008, because obviously the crisis caused, you know, like waves throughout that whole the city and all the institutions that were there. I'm sure there'll still be some of it going on today, because the kind of people that are attracted to the business sometimes are the wrong kind of people. There'll always be that. There'll always be people taking advantage of people. I think that's just the way the financial industry will sadly always work. That's why you sometimes see all these, you know, the Bernie Madoff situations or these big crises. They always come back. People running Ponzi schemes, people running, because naturally where there's money involved and greed, you'll always attract the wrong people.
And you mentioned salespeople, and that's maybe more the way it was back then. It's about getting the sale, not necessarily what's the best product for this client. It's more about, I need the sale, I need my commission, I need to make money on this deal. Is that kind of how it was?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of people that used to think like that. Yeah, and that was the part of it that never sat well with me. I mean, I can remember having a conversation just before I resigned, and I remember the conversation being like, you will deal with this client, you Scottish,
Yeah.
or you'll leave. And I can remember thinking, no, that client has told me that this money's for his grandson's university education. I'm not placing that trade in what is, to me, a stock with very little chance of doing anything good in the future just because you need to get it off your books. That attitude was, that is not the attitude they wanted, and clearly I resigned just shortly after. But the thing is, what's sad is I know that client will have been pumped for money and will have lost their grandkids' education because unfortunately I didn't have their number to actually call them at that point to warn them, whether they'd listen to me anyway, because they had 10 people on the phone telling them that I was like not to be trusted, and they would have taken the money off them anyway. So I guess it's like that's part of the system. It's just the way it works, and I've always been wanting to help people in the education side rather than ever live off their money. I think that was people think I'm mad, and why you're a chartered advisor, you've passed 22 exams, you're one of the most qualified people in the UK, just go and take a big job, live off big pensions, live off other people's money. But I would never be happy doing that. If you offer me
as well, isn't it?
Exactly. You could offer me 10 million to do that and I'd say no, because ultimately I'd be living a life where basically I've got to sit in a room and tell millionaires that they're lovely and they're great people, and and that to me wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to actually help people. I wanted to help anybody, regardless of who they are. Because everybody's equal to me, and that doesn't work well in corporate. That's why I never got on well with corporate. Like the corporate attitude is you will kiss the ass of this person, and you will be in control of these people below you. That was never the way I worked. I was just like, everybody's equal to me. I don't care like who you are, where you come from. I can remember a large financial institution, me getting a row for actually speaking to the cleaner who was at my desk about football. And it was like, you can't be speaking to a cleaner. And I was thinking, this is just a madness.
Crazy.
Like, what world do you think you're more important than that cleaner? To me, that was just, I can't get that attitude.
Totally.
So that was always the way I thought. So I never thought I'd actually get to use it in a financial sense. I thought I'd have to probably leave finance to help people in some other capacity. But I think when I understood a bit, when I was in New York and I was in a bar once, I met a financial coach, and I was like, I don't know if that'll work in the UK. That was like maybe 10 years ago. I'm not sure that'll work in the UK. But then I also, at that point, when I was in New York, previous to that, I did say, when people were like queuing around the corner at Dunkin' Donuts for a coffee, I was like, that'll never work in Glasgow. People will never pay for hot water in Glasgow. That's never going to happen. There is no way you're going to sell coffee to people in Glasgow. They've got it in their houses.
Yep.
But it does show you it does change, and we do eventually catch up with America and Australia. So I think
they say in America, when America coughs, we catch a cold.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that is true. And I think now we're seeing people understanding a bit more about what financial mentoring or financial coaching, although I don't like that word, means. It is essentially, it's like having an expert on your side, in your corner. That's the way I describe it. It's like somebody to help you rather than to sell to you. That
coaching thing you mentioned, I actually put a post out about that a few days ago. The coaching industry, if you want to call it that, there's a lot of skepticism right now, because there's so many people who call themselves coaches or mentors with no actual experience, no life experience, lived experience, business experience, and they're then trying to pass that over to people, and those people then get bad advice. And it has a trickle effect, and people go, I've had a mentor before and it didn't work. And it's like, you've had a bad mentor, you've had a bad coach. So I think, to go back to your point, I think the fact you've got loads of experience in that industry, you know exactly what you're talking about. You've seen the good, the bad, what people have done well, and you can actually advise from a personal standpoint, because you've probably lost money, you've probably made money on several trades. So I think the coaching game can be like that. But again, from everything I know about you,
No, I agree with that. And that's one of the reasons I don't like using the word, is because anybody in the UK can call themselves financial coach. And there is like 6-week courses you can go on. They're not regulated in any way, because there's no real regulation of coaching. And they can become a financial coach. And I see them like talking about, I don't know much about investments or pensions, and I don't know anything about the stock market, but I can help you sit in a room and master your mindset and money. And I'm thinking, right, okay, that sounds good. And if they can talk to people that are coaches like that, and it helps them with their money mindset, that is good. But like for me, like I feel like if you're going to help somebody with their finances and their plan, and understand like their investments and understand their future, you're going to have some knowledge or background in finance. or you're going to have done it yourself to understand how to teach somebody else to do it. Otherwise, I find like to miss out these big parts of money would be a disservice to people almost. So
you see that a lot in the Bitcoin space, don't you? What's your thoughts on Bitcoin? I always like to know from an expert, what's your thoughts on Bitcoin?
See, like everybody asks me this question, like with Bitcoin. I've never invested in Bitcoin. I'm a slightly gutted when somebody in Glasgow and a guitar night out told me in 2011 to invest in it. Probably that should have been said. But the reason I don't invest in it is quite simple, because I just don't. I don't fully understand it. And if it became worthless tomorrow, I don't think many people in the world would care. And I'm always, that's always like a point where I think, well, I like to invest in businesses that sell real things to real people that I know have worked for a long period of time, 100 years or 50 years. People will care if McDonald's doesn't exist tomorrow, but will they care if Bitcoin doesn't? Most people, won't bat an eyelid, because to me, like a business, let's say for example, a McDonald's, it's a business which creates revenue, it creates profit, it's growing,
creates employment,
it creates employment, and it has a massive amount of real estate around the world which it can sell if it isn't in any financial problem. But also, what it does is it pays dividends, it pays actual money to you for owning that share. Whereas Bitcoin doesn't pay any form of income. It is purely, it's like a currency that's supposed to be stable, but I'm trying to imagine me going into a Glasgow showroom and saying, I'll give you X Bitcoin for that Range Rover. What they're going to say? They're going to say, they're not going to shake my hand, are they? So I'm unsure exactly. And maybe it's because I don't fully understand it. But I think if you don't fully understand something, and I've always said that to people investing in shares, if you don't fully understand something, just walk away from it. If you don't understand it, don't invest in it. And I think that's the biggest problem most people make when they invest in the stock market. They listen to their mate dead in the pub, and they'll just say, I put $5,000 in that because my cousin's brother's, wife says this, like,
she made 20 grand on that
exactly.
last
She
week.
made 20 grand on that. Well, to be fair, you'll meet anybody that's made 20 grand in a Glasgow bookmakers like every single Saturday, but it doesn't mean to say you're going to be able to do the same. And you didn't buy it at that point, and you don't understand any more than they do. And I think that is my biggest bugbear with investing, is the reason that people think the stock market doesn't work is because what they do is like, it's kind of the opposite of what they do. If they buy a television, they go to Curry's and they'll go to a shop and they'll look around loads of TVs. They'll look at the online reviews. They'll ask their friends about the TV.
Compare prices.
They will get maybe some expert help in the shop. When they go to buy a share or they go to buy like a coin, they just say like, some of my mates said it's a good buy, and they'll just buy like 5,000 or 1,000 with like not even doing. Like, they'll research a fridge more, definitely. It's crazy to me, and that's what it is with investing. It's about doing research, like separating the good companies from the bad companies. And when you do that, you've got a much better chance of making money. And it's not rocket science. But the problem is most people do the wrong thing. They take a stock, they put 100% of their money in it, it starts losing money, they take it out, panic, and then they go, that stock market's dangerous, or that's a dangerous, risky game, and walk away from it forever, not realising that like there's a way to invest, but also it never goes up in a straight line, does it? Like, it's like the stock market always goes up over time. Always. That is a fact. But it's a bit like looking at the Himalayas from space. It's like, you can't just go down and walk across it. So there's going to be some big ups and downs. Like, it's kind of the same with the stock market. You've got to realise there's going to be some times that you don't feel particularly well investing, because there's going to be some nervous times. There's going to be some great times where you make lots of money, but you've got to realise that it is going to be like a volatile.
It's when people get emotional, that's when they lose money, isn't it? Am I right in saying that? Like, I read that in one of the books when I was reading up, and when people make a bit of money, they go, oh, yeah, beauty, I'll keep that in, or they'll maybe cash out. But also if they lose money on their initial investment, they also panic and take that out as well. So you've almost got to detach yourself from the emotion of it. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
I mean, I work with clients a lot on behavioural finance. It's such an important thing, because the pain of losing money is felt twice as much as the pleasure of gaining money. And I think people are really bad. People are really bad at, they will sell profits too early, and they will not cut losses either if they've made a mistake. So like, you'll come to me, or they'll say, I've got this share, it's 50% down. And you're like, well, what you just watched it go down, thinking like, this is realising you've made a bad investment. I just need it to go up 50% to break even. You're like, no, that's not how it works. It needs to go up 100% to break even. And then they're like, because it doesn't work geometrically, losses, like, and that they find that hard to compute. And then you're like, but when you use the analogy, like, you've just sold two of your companies that are been in lovely profit, and have been actually increasing in value because they're doing well. And I always use the analogy, right? Okay, so let's say you had 3 racehorses, 2 of them are winning every week, and one of them is continually losing and can't finish a race. Which one are you selling?
Yep.
And then they get it, and then they kind of they go, right, okay, now
Something they can understand.
Yeah, something they can relate to, and they say, okay, I kind of understand that now. I shouldn't be, if the company keeps on doing the right things, why am I trying to sell profits too early? Because like some of the biggest mistakes people make, like believe it or not, some of the biggest mistakes people make in the stock market is selling a stock too early that goes on to make a fortune, rather than the companies that might go bust, for example. Because it is sometimes the ones that they don't give enough time to, or that they don't hold long enough. But first of all, you need to understand what you're doing before you even get to that level that you should be buying an individual stock. But you need to really know what you're doing before you get to that level, I think.
And you started Financial Health Club, which is an interesting concept, because maybe I'm wrong here, I don't know too many other people doing that type of coaching for, I'm guessing it's for, you've mentioned it right, it's for anybody, but I'm guessing it's for people that are business owners that are a bit more clued up and want to learn. Is that kind of your target audience?
I would say that my average client would probably, who comes to me for the kind of like coaching service, would probably be, somebody that's, I would say, a business owner or somebody who is middle-aged, probably people that have got their first house, they've got a car, they've either got kids and settled down, or they're maybe about to have kids, or they're not going to have kids now, and they now know what their future looks like. So that's kind of, they've done well, they've got a good job, they've maybe bought a nice house, but they're at that point, okay, what's next? Where am I actually going? How can I make this better? I hear about my friends that have got these £1 million pensions, or they've got all these money in ISAs, and I've got no idea what the stock market is. So like, if you sit down and you can help educate them, and they can ask all these questions that they think are stupid questions, but there are no silly questions. It's just about understanding, what the difference is between an ISA and a pension. What can you put into these on an annual basis? How does it work?
What's an ETF?
Yeah, exactly. What is an ETF? What is an index fund? What's what is how much? What's a junior ISA? How can I use it? Because a lot of people think, okay, I can use it, but what can go in it? Because I think a lot of people get confused as well with like what platforms are good, thinking that the platforms are doing something different when they're really just shops that sell things. It doesn't matter whether you go into Marks and Spencer. Yeah, exactly, a marketplace. So it doesn't matter whether you go into Marks and Spencer's or Tesco or Sainsbury's. They all sell quite similar things inside. So it's kind of like, it's helping people understand that, and they can ask questions, and they can say, I've been on the site now and I don't understand this, this and this. And the thing is, most of all these sites, it's like an Amazon. How often, there must be 1,000 buttons on Amazon. How often do you need to use more than 5 or 6? So it's kind of like, but it's having somebody to help you understand, how do you go in and buy something? How do you sell it? What are the rules of like, what does this mean on the screen? And like, I just don't understand what this means. I need to, this jargon doesn't make sense to me. What's an accumulation fund? What's an income fund?
And then it's a decision about, are you going to, just invest regularly every month and set away, or are you going to trade, which from what I've gathered is pretty difficult to be consistent to trade, because it's almost like a full-time job if you're trading. Am I right in saying that, if you're constantly trying to take money off the table? Whereas
I think like day trading is something that people come to me all the time, and like, I've never ever met a wealthy day trader. Like, day trading is like trying to pick up pennies in front of a steamroller. What I mean? It is literally like it's a really, really difficult thing that it would probably require you to sit looking at a screen for like 12 hours a day, watching candlesticks going up and down. That is like of no interest to most people. Most people do not have the time. They're business owners. They want to invest. They want to be successful. They just need to know roughly how to do it simply and consistently and move on. Some of them will come and work with me longer. They will want to understand how I pick shares using research tools. Like, as I always say, it's like a filter system. It's like, the stock market's got a few thousand stocks on it, but maybe only 100 I would possibly invest in, because it's like anything. It's like when you go to buy a holiday, you go, okay, like, I want to filter, I want it to be a 4-star or a 5-star. I want a swimming pool. I want the beach to be close. By the time you filter down from 10,000, you've only got like 100 options. And that's similar at the stock market. It's like there's only so many good companies making money, making revenue, making returns on their capital that have got low debt that you might want to invest in. And so it's kind of like, how do we find these companies? Then now my chances of making money go much higher. So that's kind of like, so some of them would want to work on that side, but the majority just want a simplistic approach to like how they can better their future.
And I'm guessing when you're starting out with a client, you're almost trying to map out what their goals are as well. What is it you're actually trying to achieve?
Yeah, exactly.
And that then dictates what the strategy is.
Totally, because I think that's the most important thing, and that's not done enough in the actual financial advice game. Is that like the first hour with clients, I never speak about money. I just talk about them. Like I was like, who are you, and who's most important to you, and what do you value? Because like everybody values something different. Like somebody might want a second home in France. Somebody might want to own a coffee shop in Brighton. That is their only desire. You know, like they don't have a desire to reinvent the wheel. That is just what they want. And for somebody that wants a coffee shop in Brighton at 45, clearly they're not going to need a pension because they can't access it till they're 57 or maybe potentially even older. So like, yes, they might pay into a pension for the long term, but now the coffee shop becomes a medium term goal, and it becomes the sole goal because maybe they've got a house already, or other people it might be it's the short term goal is much more the focus. So you definitely need to speak about what they value, about what would annoy you if you didn't achieve it. Like if I said to you, you've got £10 million, what does life look like? And you're like, what is it that you need to happen, or else you'll look back in your life and think, I wish I could have done this, or I wish I could have done that, or I wish I'd put a bit of money in. Because like I always say, like if these clients will tell me what they value, and I'll say, okay, if you're saying you value this, you value that, you value the holiday home, you value more time with your kids, like look at your bank statement. Does it show that value, or can I just see that you value Jeff Bezos at Amazon, or that you value McDonald's, or that you value
coffee?
Yeah, exactly. So you're making those billionaires richer. That billionaire is getting richer and richer every single time you buy a coffee or a McDonald's. These billionaires get richer, but your family that you're working hard for is staying the same. You're not adding to your wealth at all. And then they get it and they go a light bulb moment. They think, right, okay, I need to be working hard for my family, not to make billionaires at Apple even richer billionaires. Because
it's that discipline, isn't it? Like I think a lot of people struggle with the idea of, right, okay, if I put money in and it compounds, I'll have a lot more money in 15 years, 20 years time. People struggle to see that far ahead. Even though they try and visualize it, they almost in general don't want to commit to that, because it is a big commitment from a discipline perspective. Again, I can only speak from experience. I didn't properly invest until the last 12 months. I made a wee bit of money through some business sales, and I started dropping some cash into the stock market, but only after I read a couple of books. I took a few guidance from people, and I came to the conclusion after those bits of advice that there was a few ETFs to drop in. I'm going to have a live coaching session, I think, just now, which is good. But I dropped them into a world ETF, SNDA or something it's called, and S&P 500, XLXQ. It's like a tech ETF. I hope that was a good choice. But they've went up in value, which is good. But again, a lot of the literature about this, I tried to read, I might butcher this name, but I tried to read a book by a guy called, it might have been Stan Weinstein or something.
Yeah, Stan Weinstein. But is it making profits in bull markets and bear markets?
What do you think of that book, if you read it? Because I tried to read the first chapter. I was like, oh my God, this is so complex. I can't wrap my head around this.
And the thing is, like, some of the techniques that he talks about, I do teach to clients because they are very important. But as I had this exact conversation with a client that was about to work with me who just tried to read that book, I'm like, that book is good, but you're not at that level yet. You're not at the level where you need that information is going to help you. That information is good information, but it's
not beginner level.
It's like once you get the building blocks in place, you will then understand how that will help you buy and sell shares in the future. But it's not a beginner's, and that's one of the biggest problems. People always say to me, everybody, like, if you go onto Amazon, the best book to read is The Intelligent Investor, written by Benjamin Graham. They're like, I think I fell asleep halfway through the first few chapters of that book, having worked in the stock market and read hundreds of books previously, because it's just so complex, and it's written at a time. You've got to remember that these books were written at a time when people were encouraged to use long words and jargon
to complicate it for a reason.
Or it was just the way people wrote 100 years ago, like back in the 1940s or whenever the book was written. So it's kind of like, it's really important to understand that there's easier ways to learn now. It's really complex stuff that some of these books are teaching. The education is great in these books, but you would need to have a certain level of ability first to be able to pick it out. You know, like it's a bit like I always use it like the analogy of like I play guitar and bagpipes and stuff like that, and I can look at music in a bagpipe chart and go, that is this and that is that. But if I was starting out, I could never play them in a million years. And it's the same as like looking at a guitar book. If I was to look at a guitar book, I'd go, that's like an arpeggio and like. But I mean, to somebody starting out, they would have no idea where to put their fingers.
Yeah.
They'd have no idea like what string is, what note is what. So like to read that stuff is pointless.
Yep.
You know. But
did you bring the guitar with you though?
Absolutely not.
No. You're pretty good in the guitar, though. I know you sing a few songs on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I like to do that. I think because that's another thing. Like me playing, I played guitar to try and connect with Ryan Reynolds and just playing daft songs, and I play some good daft songs that I make up on the spot just about LinkedIn. But the thing is, there's quite a few clients who've come to me and said, like, I'm only getting in touch with you because you were playing the guitar, and I think if you play the guitar and you're ready to like have a laugh, you can't be that boring when it comes to money. Yep. So like that does help, and that's where like that idea of people buying people does it becomes so important when people are kind of scared to show themselves on LinkedIn. Like the other sides of their personality, they get too bland. Like it's like business speak, isn't it? But really, people do buy people, and I think that's the reason why. Like, just whether it's a picture of a day out with a family, or just talking about like the struggles that you've got in life, or the struggles that you've got as a parent, or whatever it is, or just talking about like something that people can relate to. Yeah. Like obviously Scotland getting beaten, or like people relate to that. They can understand the pain of spending money to go and watch Scotland lose at the Euros. They understand, they sympathise, but they also see a bit of themselves in that, because they might be a West Ham fan that's been like gutted for years travelling the world. So it kind of brings people into your like sphere or your community, that either people are drawn to you, maybe only for that one post, and then they follow you, and then 3 months later they inherit some money, or their life changes, or they maybe get a new job and they're thinking, right, I might actually now work with Martin, I can afford to, or this time like I have got somebody who has just inherited money and it is just about to change their life. But again, they will probably need a wealth manager, but they need me first, because they just don't want to go into a London wealth manager and be completely blown away by
It's good they've came to you, because like there's so many people who do fall into money with the wrong mindset. I mean, it's well known, like lottery winners. They earn that, well, earn's the wrong word. They get that big check, and then I think they become financially worse off on average in 3 years' time or something, because they overspend, they over leverage, they do all sorts of crazy stuff with it.
Well, that definitely comes from the money mindset, because they have got a really poor money mindset. They just spend the money because they don't understand what it's taken to get that money. Yeah, and that's why I'm so like passionate about trying to get people to get their kids to understand investing, because what people tend to do in the UK is that they tend to like create ISAs or trust funds for their kids, but they don't involve the kids, and then they give them this money, and then they're surprised when they blow it all, or they spend it on their friends on a trip to Tenerife. You know. But if you actually like talk to kids and you show them investing from a young age, and you say like, this is like your ISA, this is your money, this is like, we're going to watch it grow, this is what you're invested in. So every time somebody buys a can of Coca-Cola, you make money. Every time somebody buys a McDonald's, you'll make money. Yep. And you can speak to them, and they can maybe have an understanding of like why this is better than cash, why this is like why we're building this up so we don't use credit cards. You're helping. This is like you talk to them about the growth and the investments. They then, by nature, if they had £1 million, let's say at 18, they would then value that money. They'd have seen how many years it took to get to £1 million. They would also have understood the companies that have got them there. And when it comes to them getting that access to that £1 million, they're now protective of it in the same way they'd be protective of, for example, if you planted a lovely tree in the garden and you nurtured it together, they would not let you cut it down with a chainsaw. They would have a different approach to that money than somebody that just gets a phone call from their parent. Oh yeah, I'm just about to give you £1 million. Like, you know, they phone their friends. Let's go. We're all going to New York.
We're all millionaires. It's almost like trying to gamify it for the kids, isn't it? If you try and gamify something like that from an early age, and this is great advice, because I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and you know, we're actually moving out the country pretty soon, actually, and I'm wondering when I should start that process of, you know, trying to educate them on money and things like that. I mean, even Harris went to his local school disco on Wednesday night, and we gave him a little bag of coins, you know, to buy stuff, and he's like spent it all within like 5 minutes of it in the disco. He spent it on like glow up glasses, juice, sweeties, and it's like, right, okay, I've got some work to do here. But
You mean you're leaving Scotland because it's too sunny?
It's too sunny. It's too many positive people here, and
Where are you heading to?
we're going to Dubai.
Dubai.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there's a few reasons we're doing the move, but lifestyle's one, opportunities another.
Yeah.
Being around money. Money's a taboo subject here, isn't it? It's like people
It is a taboo.
don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Is that something you find is it's actually a British thing, isn't it? It's actually ingrained in our psychology.
No, it is a British thing, and I had this conversation with somebody recently. Like, there's 13 billion pounds of money in cash accounts in Britain held by something like 13 million people, right? And it's the highest in the entire G7. So it's like the highest across the whole, because basically people in Britain will not ask for help, or they will not get help on education and talk about money to anybody else. And it might be the case. I had this conversation with a client recently. Their dad had made lots of money in the stock market, had never mentioned the stock market to them ever. And that's kind of like the way it works almost. And that's why it's so important to talk about like money and to help your kids. Because why would you not want to give the gift of financial education, knowing fine well they're going to have to deal with money every single day of their life?
Right.
So it's like, like your kids will learn clearly like about business naturally, and they'll have that side of it. But with you understanding the personal finance side as well, then the two things can be separate, and then you've got guaranteed. But you're right, in Dubai people talk openly about money, and people in America talk openly about money. People in America will talk to each other about what the size their pension is, what their income is, and they'll feel confident to say, have you not got this amount? Like, you need to get in touch with my financial coach, or you need to get in touch. They'll help each other. They'll be like almost kind of, that doesn't seem to happen in the UK yet, or whether it, Yeah,
because if you have a good contact in the UK, a lot of people are actually don't want to give that contact out. It's like, this is no, I want to keep this.
Yeah, it's just for me. I don't want you to become rich. It's just for me.
It's crazy. Yeah?
It's like, and it is, and that's the good thing about LinkedIn, because it creates like that community of people who think similarly. It creates a community of people who help each other naturally. And like, I don't have any skills when it comes to like marketing or advertising or creating graphics on Canva, but I've met people through LinkedIn who help me out on that side and things like that. And it's just, and again, people who kind of like spur you on and give you like that bit of advice free, and you give it back that you probably need.
It's that positive feedback loop you're getting from LinkedIn, isn't it?
Yeah, and everybody's kind of like pulling together for each other, aren't they? They want each other to be successful. And you're right, it's like that different way it's the different way of like going to a Scottish school where it's like, like it's that where people are kind of negative.
How quickly can I spend this money?
Well, I think that is the biggest problem. Like I always say that it falls back to childhood. When you get 20 quid for Christmas, everybody says to you, what are you going to spend it on? Like, get rid of that 20 quid. That's bad, that money. Get rid of it. Well, you're going to go to the shop and buy £10 of sweeties and £10 of a figure, a Star Wars figure, or whatever it is. That is almost like everybody is coached that way by parents and grandparents.
That's a great point, because even when I think back as a kid, when I had some money to spend as like pocket change, I would go to the shop, and if I had change, like pennies and stuff, I would ask for penny sweeties just to get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's very true what you say.
No, I'll often have this conversation like with a client, and they'll say like, I've done well, I've done some savings and stuff like that. I went to get like a dress and it was 50% off. And I'm going like, what did you do with the other 50%? And they're like, well, because I saved 50% in the dress, I bought I bought a belt, and so you've not really saved 50%, have you?
Still spent it.
You still spent it, and they're like, yeah, I did actually, because that comes from a mindset thing as well, where it's like, it's almost like getting, you went to spend that amount of money, so even though you were given a deal, you still feel compelled to spend that money. It's like,
it's interesting,
it is like people have got these kind of like anchors. It's the same reason as like some people have got that kind of like sunk cost fallacy as well, where some people will be like, there's famous examples of people driving through snow and getting 5 trains to get to a football match, for example, because they've spent 20 quid in the ticket, and they're like, they can't see the logic in the fact that they're going to spend a lot more money to get there and potentially miss it. Yeah, but it might be on television anyway, and you've already spent the 20 quid, it's gone. Like, if it's going to take you 5 hours to get there and it's going to cost you an extra 100 quid or whatever, that's now money you've got to spend. But people sometimes get like, they get too kind of like bogged down on their own mind. And like I've used the example in my LinkedIn posts a lot of like how people, they're really bad at calculating money in their brain, so they suffer from something called mental accounting. So mental accounting, we're all bad at in our brain. And the example I always use is like, if somebody goes to a shop to buy like a television, let's say, and they've seen it online for 1,150, let's say, and they see this TV and it's 1,200 in the shops, and the person serving them is nice, they'll be like, oh, it's roughly the same price, isn't it? So I'll just buy it in the shop. The salesperson's nice. But if they were going to buy a printer that was 100 quid in the shop and 50 quid online, they would just leave immediately. Oh, it's half the price, 50 quid online, I'm going to leave the shop. But it's exactly the same saving, it's 50 quid.
Yep.
50 quid is 50 quid. But people get this they're really bad at calculating numbers, big numbers in their brain. When you compare it. It's exactly like, when you go to buy a suit, somebody will say you've just bought £1,000 suit. You need that 100 quid tie, because they're obviously comparing it against the £1,000 suit. £100 tie no longer seems that big. Whereas when you walk into the shop, somebody goes £100 for a tie. I don't know if I'd pay that, but suddenly against a £1,000 suit, you might. And it's understanding some of these mental biases.
And it's your environment as well in some cases.
Exactly.
Which influences your buying decisions sometimes. In terms of some practical advice, right? So, what would, if there's somebody listening to this that knows they need to get their shit together in terms of finances, what's the first things they should start doing? Because the worst thing to do is obviously dive in, start investing in something you don't understand. What's the first basic steps someone should start? The
first steps everybody should have is they must have like an emergency fund. I think one of the reasons people fail investing is because they put like their savings or the money they need into the stock market. Now, you should never do that. You should not, like, if you're going to buy a house in 2 years, you don't put your money in the stock market. You look at the stock market as a much more medium to longer term thing. And the other thing is, you need money for emergencies. If your boiler or your car goes, you need to have that money readily accessible in a cash account. Before you've got that, you shouldn't really be investing money, because you need to have that kind of like buffer before you're comfortable enough to say, okay, I don't need this money for a while. This is investment money.
But to give a bit, is that a month's worth of savings, 3 months, 6 months worth of emergency fund? Would you say?
I would say if you're a couple who both earn, I'd say 3 months. But if you're like the single sole business owner and sole kind of like income for your house, I would say you would probably want to be making it a bit more, 3 to 6 months.
And the best way I'm guessing to do that is just literally a standing order to a different bank account you've got. Just make it a habit,
and just name accounts different things. I think people, if they can name different accounts, whether it's a holiday account or an emergency savings account, and just name them, and it's easy to just name those accounts nowadays. And I think and have that money like in different pots. And I think most people say that they struggle to save money, but if they struggle to save money, I would just get like 3 highlighter pens, go through your bank statement, put everything that's in green as like your like absolute emergency expenses, like your mortgage, your council tax, your gas and electricity. Then get one in blue and just highlight all the stuff that you'd like to always have. That might be a gym membership, things that are important to you, like kids clubs, and then just highlight the rest in yellow, all the stuff that you spend, like hundreds and hundreds, all of those trips to Tesco, 30 quid here, 40 quid at Subway, like all that, and just add it all up and see where your money is going. Like see like how much of your money, like, because when I say, clients will often come to me and say, Martin, the problem is I don't earn enough. I said that is never the problem. Most people that I come across, it's not earning. People are obsessed with income. It's usually not income. It's usually what you're doing with the income. And that's why I always use the example of that, Ronald Reed, the millionaire janitor that they found in America. This is somebody who didn't start investing until 38, fought in the war, was never more than a janitor his whole life, and died with like 9 million quid in the stock market.
Disciplined,
just invested from the age of 38. Every single month he invested some of his wage in the stock market, picking good companies, but importantly he let them grow. He didn't panic and sell out. He must have lived through so many times of panic when JFK was shot and there was like the whole Cuban crisis. He would have lived through the 70s of when there was the issues globally with the currency and gold being decentralized. And then you had the 1980s and the 1987 Wall Street crash, and then the Gulf War, and the Twin Towers being hit. But again, never sold, never continually invested, continually doing.
Because one thing I heard in another podcast you done, and I've read this in this book here, which I should actually give a shout out to, because How to Own the World. It's brilliant. It's that's a basic beginner's one. It's really good. But the thing he talks about is, and you've said it as well, Martin, is like you're almost investing into the future of the human race, and our progression is like it's funny times we live in, because we've never been better off as a species than at this point right now. In so many ways, but yet it also feels like there's so much carnage around us and mayhem
Yeah.
around us. But if you have this thought of the future is always going to keep improving no matter what's going on, because that has been the trend.
Yeah, and I think that's important. People will always say to me, but what is the stock market? And it seems like this big casino, but it's not. It contains companies of the world. The stock market goes up by roughly 10 to 11% every year on average, because company profits worldwide on average go up about 8%, and you add in dividends of 2 or 3%, you get this magical 10 or 11% figure. So it's like the economy globally will rise about 8-fold during most people's adult life. So it's natural that, you know, as long as the human race keeps evolving, there'll be somebody at school right now that's about to create the next Amazon, the next Facebook, the next Tesla. That's why you invest in the stock market. You're getting a piece of some of the greatest minds in the world. And people, like, they overcomplicate that thing by thinking of like, that is essentially what you're doing. You're essentially buying a piece of the future earnings of what are really intelligent people that are going to change the world. And every single time that some of these people sell something, you get a piece of it. And when you think about it like that, it's much easier to think it's natural that in 10, 15, 20 years from now, it's going to be higher than it is now. Like, if I take a photo of Glasgow today and I take it in 20, 30 years time, I'm going to see much more expansion. I'm going to see more houses. Maybe better roads, but I should see like some evolvement of like more office buildings, more like essentially more
infrastructure,
more infrastructure around about the whole of the UK. You'd expect to see advancements in technology that will obviously change the world as well. So it's natural that you're going to be a benefactor of that. And I think too many people just, they as you say, they just don't get enough help before they start. And it's a bit like, I always use the analogy that I'm like a driving instructor. I am helping you understand like what all the buttons in the car mean,
the rules of the road,
the risks of the road. Like, I'll help you drive safely. If you drive at 150 miles an hour after your lesson,
look ahead of you, look behind you.
Exactly. Like, it's like, if you drive at 150 miles an hour, I know what's going to happen to you, because, like, you know, you might get to the first town or the second town, but you're not going to get to the third. So, and it's like understanding that. But I don't need to. You won't need me forever. I don't need to pick the colour of your car for you. I don't say to you, you must buy an Audi, you must buy a Mercedes. You can choose the platform, you can choose the investment yourself, because now you've got the knowledge to do that. You know, like, and you will get confident the more you drive. The more you drive, you'll become, it'll be second nature. The more you invest, the more confident you'll get with the terminology, with understanding like how you're, like I always say, the most important organ in investing is the stomach. You actually start to learn about yourself. When you've got skin in the game, you learn how you feel when money goes down, how you feel when money goes up. And it's kind of like getting into that psyche of like understanding that a bit better is really what will make you a better investor. And then you will get confidence, because you'll start to see that you've lived through volatility and it gets better. Like, the average stock market gain after a crash, the next 5 years is an average of 110% growth. Like after, and I'm talking about every single crash that's happened over time. Some of them are 200%, like after 2008. I think the COVID one is at least 120%. We're up since the COVID crash. If you just leave it 5 years, you'll be okay. If you were on a desert island and came back in 2021, you'd have thought nothing happened. like a year after COVID, you'd have thought that was quite a good year for the stock market. But you'd never have seen the plunges, you'd never seen the chaos, you'd never seen the blood in the streets. You know, because people are like, there's a famous investor called Bill Ackman who went on to like CNBC or went on to like Bloomberg, and he was basically telling people during the panic of COVID that the stock market, he'd never seen anything like this, that everybody should sell their shares. You know, that almost essentially he was basically saying that he'd never seen this is the end, is what he was saying. And of course, Bill Ackman made £2 billion in the next 3 weeks because he was buying all the shares everybody that was watching the call was selling. So, and it's like, because these people have been there and done it before. They know that every time there's going to be new investors. I've never seen this before, and new investors, they act in the herd mentality. They all run for the same way from the fire. You know,
that's so true. And that's so true in so many things with us as humans, isn't it? We just kind of we do for very herd mentality, hive mentality. And even I've been watching finances for a while, but not necessarily investing. But there's so many people, even Robert Kiyosaki actually talks about crashes all the time.
He's obsessed with crashes.
And it's like, well, when is it coming? You know, and it does bounce back. It's interesting. Even Elon Musk actually a few years ago, I think it was doing something about Tesla. It was talking shit about his own company or something, lowered the stock amount and then bought it all back, something like that.
Yeah.
But they know how to play the market, because obviously Elon Musk is obviously got a massive following and he can dictate the market just with a tweet.
Yeah, and I think everybody's always looking for the next stock market crash. The problem is when they look for a stock market crash, they're always looking for something that's happened before, and that's why they can never identify when a stock market crash truly comes, because nobody in 2008 was looking for a mortgage and debt crisis that was basically like round the world. Nobody was looking in 2019 for an infection that was basically going to shut down the world. Nobody was thinking of that. So
it couldn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah. So the next big crash that people are looking for is always something. They're always looking for that thing that's happened in the past. At the moment, they're talking about, like, what about Britain's debt? What about, it could be an IT internet outage that sends shares 40% down because so many companies
some kind of cyber attack.
Exactly. It could be a cyber attack. It could come out of nowhere from, and it could be something like that shuts down the internet for 3 months that would capitulate some earnings for companies. So, but nobody's looking for that. They're looking for something that's happened before, and sometimes things that have happened before, people have got more risk management of, and they're kind of they start. There's things that can be done with something that's happened before. It's usually something out of left field that causes the wave after wave after wave, and all the dominoes start to fall at the same time.
So getting a wee rainy day pot and emergency fund is one thing. If there was other kind of tips you would give people starting out, well, would you say to people?
I would say definitely start investing as soon as possible. Start to understand your savings rate, which is basically just taking the amount of money you save and divide it by your income and times it by 100. Because I think a lot of clients will say to me, I've always saved £200 a month, Martin. And I'll say, yeah, but what's your income now? Oh, it's like 50 grand. Okay, but what was your income 5 years ago? It was 20 grand, but you're still saving 200 quid.
Scale it with your income rising.
It needs to be moving to that kind of 10-20% of your earnings each month to get it to work for you. So start to understand your savings rate, start to build your finances by investing even small amounts in the stock market. The massive advantage that this generation has, which my generation wouldn't have had, is access to this stuff on apps and access to be able to do it. When I was a stockbroker, you used to have thousands to open an account. You had to have thousands to place a trade. Now people can go on and buy like £10 of like an investment. That's because of like the economies of scale of millions of investors, of tech companies helping. We can all do it. We can all start from really low amounts. And a young person doing that, honestly, like a young person putting a few £100 away, it will be unbelievable with compounding. Unbelievable if you can do that at 18 or 19. There's
these little compound calculators you can get on Google, and just by putting in some figures and years and stuff, it shows you exactly what you would get, like assuming
with that return.
Totally, it's amazing. And as a safe bet for somebody, if they didn't get a coach, for example, like yourself, Martin, but if a safe bet would be an ETF potentially.
Yeah, most people, everybody's talking obviously about like the S&P 500 and talking about investing in index funds, which are just basically packages of obviously mimicking an index. And I think that's a safe way for people to get like a piece of every company, and it's something that a lot of people see value in now. I think it comes from Warren Buffett's comment, which is like, if he died tomorrow, he'd be quite happy if his family invested all the money in index funds. And I because naturally it's much lower cost than active management. Now, an active manager, like a fund manager, would have to be paid regardless of whether they lose your money or not. So like some clients will come to me and they'll say, I've not made any money in 5 years, but I have had to pay this for funds and I've had to pay this to my financial advisor. I'll say, well, it's not, you haven't not made money, you've lost a lot of money because inflation has eroded a lot of that value, and you've been paying for a fee for something that you're not getting, you're not getting the benefit from. So like these packaged products, which I would describe as like kind of ready meals, are available to investors now. It's nice, simplistic investing. It will, over the long term, track the trends of the market, getting that average 10 or 11% return. What I would be wary of is the S&P 500 and some of these other markets have done exceptionally well over the last 5 years. They've averaged at like 13-14%. Over the last 10 to 20 years, they've averaged a higher amount than is normal if you look at it over 100 years or so, due to
it's propped up with Magnificent Seven thing, doesn't it?
So they're so highly priced. This has happened before with the Nifty 50 stocks, and there was some massive crashes after with some of these stocks being kind of too powerful at the time. So I guess like there there's it's an easy way for people to invest, but also if you're looking for obviously that higher level of return, it's probably better to get that bit more education in what you're doing if you're looking to maybe get a more short-term, medium-term gain as well.
So the best thing to do is get a coach.
I think it's probably
That's what you're saying.
It's probably not a bad move to help boost the ability that you've got to kind of generate returns. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as we begin to wrap up, it's been a brilliant conversation, Martin. I've really enjoyed it, and it's one of these ones where I think we could keep going because I'm learning stuff just listening to you as well. You've gave some practical tips there, which is great as well. If people want to continue the conversation with you and get in touch with you, what's the best way for people to do that?
They can contact me on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day, or they can come to financialhealthclub.co.uk or send me a message on there, or give me a phone. I'm more than happy to chat. I usually offer like a free consultation to everybody just to understand where they are and just to explore whether I can actually be of help or whether we can work together. So it's good from that point of view of finding out where you're at and whether there's a benefit to working with me.
And where you want to go and stuff.
And what you're really looking to do and what position you're in, as I say, financially, and whether you're looking to really grow at that point.
Awesome. Well, perfect. Thanks very much for being on the podcast today, mate.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
We'll need you around too, because I think we've got a lot of loose ends to tidy up as well. Pleasure, mate.
Thank you.